Okay, let's talk about one of the biggest mysteries on the planet, the Great Pyramid of Giza. I mean, for thousands of years, this thing has just been the ultimate symbol of what humans can achieve. It's a massive engineering puzzle, and today we're going to try and unpack how they actually built it.
And this is the central question, right? How on earth was this possible? Like 4,500 years ago. We're talking about a time with none of our modern tech. No cranes, no computers, nothing. So how did they pull off something that would give even our best engineers a run for their money today? Let's get into it. First, to really wrap your head around this, you just have to look at the numbers. The sheer scale it's just wild. We're talking about an estimated 2.3 million individual stone blocks. I mean, just think about that number for a second. That's how many stones they had to cut, move, and then perfectly place. And yeah, these aren't just little bricks. Most of these blocks weigh over 2 tons each. That's heavier than your average car. And get this, some of the huge granite blocks they used way up inside the pyramid, those weighed as much as 50 tons. When it was finished, it was a staggering 146.6 meters tall. That's basically a 30-story skyscraper. And for almost 4,000 years, 3,800 years to be exact, it was the tallest thing humans had ever built anywhere on Earth. That's just incredible.
Okay, so where do you even begin with a project like this? Well, the first clue is right at the bottom. You can't build something so huge and so precise if your foundation isn't perfect. And the Giza Plateau was anything but flat. It was all rocky and uneven. So job number one was to create a perfectly level base. And how they did it was, well, it was brilliantly simple. The engineers used this tool called an A-frame level. You just place it on the ground, and a little weighted line, a plumb line, hangs down. If it's off-center, you know that spot is too high. So they just mark the high spots and chip, chip, chip away at the rock until that plumb line hung perfectly straight. They did this over and over until the whole thing was basically dead flat. And the level of precision here is it's astounding. Each of the pyramid's 4 sides is almost perfectly aligned to true north, south, east, and west. We're talking accurate to within a tiny fraction of a degree. And here's the kicker. They did it without a compass. Compasses didn't even exist yet. So how did they do it? They looked at the stars. See, back then, the star we call the North Star wasn't in the right spot. So what they likely did was track a couple of other stars as they circled around in the night sky. By finding the imaginary center point of their rotation, they could pinpoint true north, the Earth's actual axis. I mean, that is just an incredible feat of astronomy. Okay, so you've got this perfect laser-straight foundation that's aligned with the stars. What's next? Well, now you have to gather all the materials. We're talking over 6 million tons of stone. This wasn't just construction. It was a logistical nightmare on a scale that's hard to even imagine.
And just to understand how complex this was, look at where they got everything. They used 3 different kinds of stone. The main stuff, the yellow limestone for the core, they could get that locally, right there on the Giza Plateau. Easy enough. But the beautiful white limestone for the outer casing, that came from a place called Tura, about 25 kilometers away. And the really heavy-duty granite for the inside chambers, that had to be brought all the way from Aswan, which is 800 kilometers to the south. They had to float it down the Nile. And it wasn't just about the stone. Think about the tools. They needed copper to make their chisels and saws, and that had to be brought in from the Sinai Peninsula. And then there's wood. You need tons of wood for boats to carry the stone and sleds to drag it. But Egypt is a desert kingdom. Good, strong wood was incredibly scarce and valuable. It was like gold. They had to import that too. Okay, which brings us to the big one. The question everyone asks, the one that's puzzled people for centuries. How in the world did they lift all those 2-ton, 10-ton, 50-ton blocks all the way to the top? Well, the leading theory, the one most experts agree on, involves a really clever system of ramps.
But we're probably not talking about one single giant ramp going straight up. That would have been almost as big as the pyramid itself. Instead, the evidence points to a smarter, multi-stage system. You start with a big, wide, straight ramp for the bottom third, where you're moving the biggest blocks. Then you switch to an external spiral ramp that kind of wraps around the pyramid as it gets higher. And for the very top layers, with the smaller stones, they might have even used a ramp inside the pyramid itself.
So, you might be thinking, okay, where are these giant ramps now? That's the brilliant part. The theory is they were temporary. As the pyramid got higher, they would dismantle the lower parts of the ramp and just use those very stones to build the top of the pyramid. Super efficient, absolutely no waste. Now, this whole multi-ramp system sounds pretty brilliant, right? It's a really plausible solution, but there's a final twist to the story. There's one massive problem it doesn't quite solve, and that's the problem of time. The speed they would have needed to work at has led some people to a much more radical idea.
Think about it. If the pyramid was built in, say, 20 or 30 years, the math is just staggering. It means that the workers would have had to quarry a block, shape it, haul it over, and get it into its final position once every 20 seconds. And that's working 24/7 with 100% efficiency and no mistakes. The numbers just start to feel impossible, right? And that near impossible pace is what has led some scientists to propose this really out there theory. They're asking, what if they didn't lift every single one of those massive stones?
What if they cast them in place, like a kind of ancient concrete? What if they carried the ingredients up in bags and basically made the blocks right where they needed them?
And they actually have some pretty interesting evidence for this, and it's all down to chemistry. When scientists analyzed the chemical fingerprint of the pyramid's white limestone, it didn't perfectly match the limestone from the quarry it supposedly came from. The pyramid's blocks have a different mineral mix. They have these extra minerals, these silico-aluminates, that act like binders, and you just don't find those in the natural quarried stone.
So what does that mean? Well, this different chemical signature strongly suggests that these blocks weren't just carved out of the ground. They might actually be an ancient kind of concrete, a geopolymer. The idea is that they crushed up limestone, mixed it with water and these natural binders to make a slurry, then hauled that up the pyramid and poured it into molds. It would solve the whole problem of lifting these insanely heavy stones.
So, where does that leave us? What should you take away from all this? Well, we're left with two incredible possibilities for how the Great Pyramid was built. Was it an ancient engineering marvel, a masterpiece of project management and brute force logistics? Or was it a marvel of chemistry, using a lost recipe for ancient concrete? An engineering marvel or a lost technology? The truth is, the debate still rages on, which just makes this one of the greatest mysteries of all time.